All right, recording in three, two, and one.
Wait a minute. So let me get this straight. It was cheaper, better quality, and they were easier to store. But the reason it didn't take off was because of porn.
Porn. Porn. Yes, it was all
It
porn.
was all porn.
Welcome to episode 187 of Nerdery Murdery.
Big 187. I'm Zig with your nerdery.
And I'm Jeffrey with your Murdery. Welcome to another week of the highs and lows, the ups and downs, the good and the bad, and the nerd and the murd. Um, so for us, I mean, we're way in the future, but for us that we're just past Christmas and New Year's.
Hmm.
Christmas was all about golf for me. I got so much golf stuff. I was so happy. I got GPS balls.
Oh, so you can actually go find them?
Yeah. Yeah, that's they're pretty interesting. I'd been looking at those for a while. They were pretty cool. I got a Starry Night Hawaiian shirt
Oh, nice. Oh,
and
yeah.
a
Yeah.
Darth Vader one too.
I saw the Darth Vader one. You posted that.
Yeah. Yeah, that was pretty cool. But Christmas was awesome. And then we went to a New Year's party down
Hmm.
here. And here in the South, and this may be other places as well, I don't know, but here in the South, it's tradition for to eat black-eyed peas for
Yeah,
good luck
cow
for the
piece.
New Year's.
Yeah.
Um, I can't stand black-eyed peas. I hate them. I hate them. I hate them.
Really?
Oh
Oh, I
God,
love black eyed
no,
peas.
I hate them.
I eat me some cow. Well, they need to be flavored.
Yeah, I hate them.
It's like anything else. It has to put some flavor in them, and I like them a little spicy.
I can't stand them. Well, we went to a Hispanic couple's New Year's Eve party,
Hmm.
and they have a different tradition, and you get these skewers with 12
Hmm.
grapes on them,
Uh-huh.
and when midnight strikes, you have to eat the grapes very
Eat all
quickly, and
12 grapes.
for each grape, you do a wish for the new year.
Yeah.
I so much prefer that over black-eyed peas.
You like that better than black eyed peas?
Oh gosh, yes. Gosh. Oh, they had so much food. Oh, this is the sweetest couple. And uh, uh, Chuck is one of our listeners. He's the one that says he uses it to go to sleep at night. And I'm like,
That's,
I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing.
it depends on where he fell asleep. He's gonna get nightmares.
But they're so sweet. And they had so
Big
much
shout out
food.
to Chuck. What up,
Yeah.
Chuck?
So much food. I mean, just there wasn't an end to food.
Hmm.
So such a nice couple. Had a great time with them. And then last night we played in a glow ball tournament.
What the fuck is glow ball?
So it's completely after dark. There's no
Uh-huh.
lights. They
Uh-huh.
put little light discs in the cup in the hole itself, and
Uh-huh.
then you have these balls that you bounce onto the ground and they light up.
Okay.
And so you play at night,
Night golf?
night
That's a good
golf.
way to get eaten by an alligator, sir.
Nah, we don't have gators down here. We don't
Oh
have
yeah.
gator. Not on our course. We have nutria. Um,
Oh. Ooh.
yeah,
Ooh. I got a nightmare about a nutria from when I was about 6 years old.
yeah, we got some big nutria down here. We've got on the course. We got nutria. We got pelicans, um, geese,
White or brown?
ducks. Which one?
The pelicans, white or brown?
White.
Okay.
Those fuckers are big.
Yeah.
Good
Pelicans are
Lord, they're
huge
big.
and
But
can
anyway,
catch fish out of the air.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, because my Uncle Marvin, when he cleans fish on the dock, there's always this brown pelican sitting behind him, and he just
Yeah.
takes the scraps and throws them up in the air, and he'll just
Uh,
all, what, 30 pounds of this damn thing.
But we came in third in the global tournament.
Well, good for
That was
you.
awesome. It was great. It was so much fun. And I'm gonna admit it's all about drinking
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah, yeah, well,
and having a good time. We played with a very nice couple, Courtney and Scotty. Sweet couple. I've known them for a while. They're they are so nice. They have their house sits on hole 13. Yeah, on hole 13. And they're completely accommodating. They're like, hey, if you're here, just come on in. We got drinks, whatever.
Yeah.
They're so nice. It was so much fun. I couldn't believe how much fun it was to play glow ball.
Oh, dude, everybody I've ever met in South Texas, I thought was a really, really sweet person.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
There's a lot of very nice people down here.
I although although everyone I've met from South Texas, and I don't know if it's a regional thing or not, I don't think any of them ever sleep.
Um, I don't know.
That's everybody I've ever met from down there is like, good God, how are you still going?
Oh God, our friends down here, Faith and Billy, Faith is from Alaska,
Hmm.
and her father lives there, and he's down here for a visit, and he was talking just the other day that you know, I guess it's this time of year they get like 4 hours of sunlight a day,
Yeah, yeah,
and
it's dark
then
the rest of the day.
but then in the summer they get like 20 hours of
Hmm.
sunlight. God, that would drive me crazy.
Oh yeah, it does. It does. There's a thing called the for the wintertime called the stark raving dark. People will have parties in the dead of winter just to not go nuts.
Well, so anyway, so yeah, so we're into the new year. Next week for us, we are doing our three-way crossover with three geeky dads and two geeks and a microphone.
Yes, we
So
are.
when this episode airs, if you have not listened to that, definitely go back and listen. I am predicting it's going to be insanity and chaos. It's so much fun. We'll
I
be
have some production notes. I'm gonna try to make them let me get them out at the beginning of each episode. It's like a minute and a half. Hopefully we're cool.
I don't know that we'll get anything out. We've been on with a couple of the three geeky dads before, and of course, two geeks and a microphone. We've been along with them for done the stuff with them several times. But we'll be starting our show on three geeky dads, and then moving to two geeks and a microphone, and then we're ending on our show. So if you go back and listen in that order, and it will be
Hmm.
important to listen in all because
Yeah.
it's all tied together.
Yes, it
It's
is.
going to be a lot of fun. Going to be a lot of fun. And then the murdery will only be on our show, which I have something to tie into it, which I can't wait to tell this story. It'll be a lot of fun. So if you've not listened to the three-way crossover, please do go back and listen to that now. So with that, Zig, I'll let you take over on the nerdery side of the house.
Today we're going to talk about Betamax, or for our English listeners, Betamax.
Right.
Um, okay. So I know we got a lot of listeners out there who have no idea what I'm talking about. Um, it's a consumer level analog recording and cassette format of magnetic tape for video. So video cassettes. It was developed by Sony and was released in Japan on May 10th, 1975, followed by the US in November of the same year. Betamax is widely considered to be obsolete, having lost the videotape format war, which saw its closest rival, VHS, dominate most markets. Though Betamax tapes have higher quality image, the longer VHS tape ultimately became the standard. Despite this, Betamax recorders continue to be manufactured and sold until August of 2002, when Sony announced that they were discontinuing production of all remaining Betamax models. Sony continued to sell blank Betamax cassettes until March of 2016. And people are like, why? Because people in television production still use them. The first Betamax VCR introduced in the United States was the LV 1901 model, top loader, which included a 19-inch Trinitron television and appeared in stores in early November of 1975. The cassette contained a half-inch wide 12.7 millimeter videotape in a design similar to that of the earlier professional 0.75-inch width U-matic or U-matic format. Like the rival videotape format VHS introduced in Japan by JVC in September of 1976 and in the United States by RCA in August of 77, Betamax has no guard band and uses azimuth recording to reduce crosstalk. According to Sony's history webpage, the name had a double meaning. Beta is the Japanese word used to describe the way in which signals are recorded on the tape, and the shape of the lowercase Greek letter beta resembles the course of the tape through the transport. Excuse me. The suffix max from the word maximum was added to suggest greatness. In 77, Sony issued the first long play Betamax VCR, the SL8200. This VCR had two recording speeds, normal and the newer half speed. This provided 2 hours of recording on the L500 beta video cassette, and the SL8200 was to compete against the VHS VCRs, which allowed up to 4 and later 6 and 8 hours of recording on one cassette. Okay, kids, I may have to explain that. So how it went down was you had on a VCR, you had for recording and playback, you had standard play, long play, and super long play. If you basically stretch the tape out on the SLP, the quality went down, but you could record like 6 to 8 hours of stuff. So people would pop that in and record their favorite shows so they could go back and watch them later. That's why VHS originally had a better bite of the market share than Betamax did, because Betamax you could only play for like 2 hours. It didn't have that extended. But Betamax saw that as a problem, corrected it, and by 1978 we're already in the same business. Um, Sony was able to tout several Betamax only features, such as Beta Scan, a high-speed picture search in either direction, and Beta Skip Scan, a technique that allowed the operator to see what they were on the tape by pressing the fast forward key or rewind. If in that mode, the transport would switch into the Beta Scan mode until the key was released. This feature is discussed in more detail on Peep Search. Sony believed that the M-load transports used by VHS machines made copying these trick modes impossible. Beta Skip Scan, or Peep Search, is now available on miniature M-load formats, but even Sony was unable to fully replicate this on VHS. Beta Scan was originally called Videola until the company that made Moviola threatened legal action. Sanyo marketed its own Betamax compatible recorders under the Betacord brand, also casually referred to as a Beta. In addition to Sony and Sanyo, Beta format video recorders were manufactured and sold by Toshiba, Pioneer, Murphy, Iowa, and NEC, Zenith Electronics, and WEGA contracted with Sony to produce VCRs for their product lines. The department store Sears in the United States and Canada and Kell in Germany sold Beta format VCRs under their house brands, as did the Radio Shack chain of electronic stores. So, I'm going to borrow the Podback machine. Again, because we have a lot of younger listeners who have no idea why this was important. We're going to go back to the late 70s. If you wanted to see a movie, you had to go to the movies, or sometimes it would be shown on television. Now, you could go out and buy a Super 8 projector and get cartoons and things on Super 8 and show them. The problem is you couldn't get a full movie on Super 8. Well, you could, but it would be in 15 reels. You know, people don't realize this, but the old-fashioned movie projector, you see my hands there? This is 20 minutes. About the size of a record. That's 20 minutes on film. So you had to have multiple reels to show a full movie. A Super 8 player or 16 millimeter player, like they had in schools and again, some people's homes, would have been exponentially larger. So you couldn't effectively watch a movie at your house unless you had a 35 millimeter projector, and nobody, except the people in the movie business, had 35 millimeter projectors at their house. So the idea was, okay, we want to be able to go out on Friday night, but we don't want to miss Miami Vice, right? Because again, it ran on television. You missed it the first time, you're going to have to catch it in reruns, and you don't know when that's going to happen. So if you didn't want to miss an episode, or you wanted to record them all on one tape and do what we do now, which is binge them, you had to have something to record them on at the house. Sony's idea was that's what the Betamax was for originally. It wasn't for video rentals and things like that. That came later. The first idea was so they had videotape production in television stations. They used these giant cassettes called U-matic, and before that they were reel to reel. U-matic is very difficult to use. It's very technical. The players are finicky. In some cases, you will get bleed over from sounds from things that recorded later on in the tape. They're just not really great. Um, if you had a good technician, it wasn't a problem. But most of these people were not technicians at their homes, so no one bought U-matic for their house. Um, People were still using basically if they had video cassette, it was the reel to reel, which is what came up before the U-matic. Um, and again, kind of had to be an engineer to use it. Um, so they look at the U-matic and they think, hmm, what there's got to be a way where we can shrink this down because also U-matics are, you know, a foot across. They're pretty big and unwieldy. Um, so they started with these smaller tapes that they call Betamax. Well, before they started introducing them to the public, television stations started using them. Again, tapes are smaller. Half inch sits on a shelf quite well, especially these little cassettes. Um, so they then start marketing them to people's houses. And the idea was you get one of these things and you wanted to go out on Friday night, you record your favorite show, be it MASH, Miami Vice, whatever. So you'd go out, and when you came home, it was recorded and ready for you to watch. That was the whole idea behind VCRs. And then someone got the bright idea of putting movies on them. And not just for sale, because when they first went on for sale, there was licensing issues. So they were prohibitively expensive. Video cassettes were prohibitively expensive in the late 70s up through the early 80s. Um, so someone else, which we will talk again in a later episode, someone else had the idea of buying them all with at an inflated price and renting them out to people to use. And that's when VCRs kicked off. And at this,
You do know that that was the eventual impetus of Netflix.
Mhm.
The founder of Netflix had a late charge
Mhm.
for I think it was Apollo 13. Anyway, he had a late charge, and that was the impetus for him starting the streaming service Netflix.
Yep.
Or
Which they
or
used to,
or actually, I think the initial was the rental service Netflix.
yeah, yeah, because they would send you DVDs in the mail
Yeah.
and then you would ship them back. Um, so yeah, this is when this kicked off, and then beta, which was higher quality, but is a little more expensive, and you couldn't play it out as long as you could with VHS. But for a while, after beta extended their ability to play longer, it still never matched VHS. But the quality wasn't as bad. But you could watch, movies and stuff on it. They were renting out of the video stores at the same time. So you get the better quality. It's smaller. Eventually, it becomes cheaper. But by that time, beta was already gone. But people liked VHS better. Um, that's where we're gonna talk about this. Now, I don't really have this in my notes because I remember the argument for it. Sony did not want to release its films or its format for pornographic theaters.
Right.
Originally, pornographic theaters started showing things on videotape because it was cheaper than 35 millimeter projectors. They basically just had a big projector hooked up to a VCR, and that's how they would play them. Um, Beta didn't want to do, or Sony didn't want to do that. So VHS started doing that. And then they started putting them in stores, you know, dirty bookstores where you could rent and or own these pornographic films. Well,
It wasn't even dirt it wasn't even dirty bookstores. I'll never forget Take It Home Video had the little adult section behind the
mhm.
curtain at the back of the store, and that's
Yes,
where
it did.
all their porn was.
Yeah,
You know,
because
and as teenagers, we loved to, sneak in and just look at the covers.
look at the covers. Yeah, there's always a sign above that said 18 and up only,
Yes.
and usually a beaded curtain. But yeah, so that's kind of the argument goes. And again, I'm not sure about all of the numbers on this, but the argument goes because Sony was slow to allow their stuff to be put in into the pornographic industry, that's why they lost the race. Um, that's why a higher quality thing that was comparable in price didn't do as well as a lower quality thing. Um, because toward the end, actually, Betamax was cheaper. Um, but again, Sony didn't really have to worry about that because of the other side of their business, which again, we talked about it. They produced tapes until 2016. Why? They also offered a range of industrial products, Beta I only format for industrial and institutional uses. These were aimed at the same market that used the U-matic equipment, but again, it was easier to use. The arrival of Betacam reduced the demand for both industrial Beta and U-matic equipment. For the professional and broadcast video industries, Sony derived Betacam from Betamax. Released in 1982, Betacam became the most widely used videotape format, uh, replacing the 0.75-inch wide U-matic tape. Betacam and Betamax are similar in some ways. Early versions of Betacam use the same video cassette shape. They use the same oxide tape formula with the same um, coercive, coercivity, or you know what, where the video sticks to the tape and recorded linear audio tracks in the same location of the tape. However, in the key area of video recording, Betacam and Betamax use completely different on-tape formats. Betamax also had significant part in the play of the music recording industry when Sony introduced its pulse code modulation digital recording system as an encoder box that connected to the Betamax recorder. The Sony PCM F1 adapter was sold with a companion Betamax VCR SL2000 as a portable digital audio recorder system. So you could also record audio on it if you had the right crossover piece, and they were figuratively cheap. Um, there was also a court case. Um, it was Sony Corp of America versus Universal City Studios. One of the major consequences of the Betamax technology introduction in the US was the lawsuit Sony Corp versus Universal City Studios, also known as the Betamax case. It was in 1984. The US Supreme Court determined home videotaping to be legal in the United States, wherein home videotape cassette recorders were a legal technology since they had substantial non-infringing uses. The precedent was later invoked in MGM versus Grokster, where the High Court agreed that the same substantial non-infringing uses standard applied to authors and vendors of peer-to-peer file sharing software, notably accepting those who actively induce copyright infringement through purposeful culpable expression and conduct. In June of '83, Sony introduced high-fidelity audio to videotape as Beta Hi-Fi for NTSC. That was the format we had. Beta Hi-Fi worked by placing a pair of FM carriers between the chroma and luminance carriers, that's the C and the Y, a process known as frequency multiplexing. Each head had a specific pair of carriers. In total, 4 individual channels were employed. Head A records its hi-fi carriers at 1.3 L and 1.68 R megahertz, and the B head employs 1.53 and 1.83 megahertz. This result was audio with an 80 dB dynamic range was less than 0.005% wow and flutter, which means that the sound was really good. The problem with the sound is not perception. Would not be perceptible to human hearing. Um, and some of them were marketed as hi-fi ready, where they had that ability, but you didn't necessarily have to use it if you didn't have a stereo um, hooked up to your TV. Um, so in early 85, Sony would introduce a new feature, high band or super beta, by again shifting that Y carrier, which again made it just a little bit clearer, even though at that point they were above uh, human hearing. And in 88, Sony would again push the envelope with ED beta or extended definition Betamax, capable of up to 500 lines of luma resolution, which is amazing. Sony did introduce two ED decks and a camcorder in the late 1980s. The top end EDV 9500 deck was a very capable editing deck, rivaling much more expensive U-matic setups. Sony did market ED Beta as semi-professional users or prosumers. And then we went on to Beta Movie. Two-piece portable video systems featuring a portable VCR such as Sony's Beta Pack and a separate camera soon became available for amateurs and low-end video production. To better compete with the Super 8 film, there was a need for a less cumbersome all-in-one solution, and Sony's was Beta Movie, the first consumer camcorder Beta Movie. Used standard size beta cassettes. However, the changes required to miniaturize the mechanism forced the use of non-standard recording signal timing, which made it hard for you to pop in your beta tape into your VCR after you finished recording. The way VHS got around this is they came up with a tape that was the same size or the same width, the tape itself, but they put it in a smaller case and gave you an adapter. So you could take that little, you had to rewind it first, take that little tape out, pop it into that adapter, and you could stick it in your VCR. Although you would lose some quality, whereas with Beta, there was a little problem. Now, Sony figured out a way around that eventually, but by that time, 1986, Beta was already on its way out. Um, on November 10th, 2015, Sony announced that it would no longer be producing Betamax video cassettes. Production and sales ended March 2016 after almost 41 years of continuous production. Third-party manufacturers continue to make new cassettes. While these cassettes are designed for use with Betacam format, the cassettes are interchangeable with traditional Betamax systems. Despite the sharp decline in sales, the Betamax recorders in the late 1980s and subsequent halt in production of new recorders by Sony in 2002, Betamax, Super Betamax, and ED Beta are still being used by a small number of people, even though Sony stopped making new cassettes in 2016. New old stock of Betamax cassettes are still available for purchase at online shops and used recorders as well as cassettes, and often found at flea markets, thrift stores, or on the internet auction sites. The same with the Betacam cassettes. So I want to say, yeah, Sony lost the format wars, but eventually VHS lost too. So did they? I mean, no one.
Yeah, they did. I mean, VHS was king. VHS was everywhere because, you go back to your Blockbusters, your take it home video. Um,
God, I miss Take It Home.
y-
Take.
you know,
By the way, kids, Take It Home was the first store that got rolled over by Blockbuster.
yeah, yeah. I
Blockbuster was in Dallas. Take It Home was in Tarrant County, Fort Worth, Arlington, that area, and Blockbuster came in and just bought them out.
I loved Take It Home. I really did. But you'd go into those stores, to rent your movies, and you had just VHS everywhere, and then
Mhm.
you would have this little tiny section of beta.
Need a section of Betamax.
Because VHS was the king. VHS was, it just had everything. Um, I love back to the days of my VHS when I could record TV shows. I love setting them up,
Mhm.
to record shows because I could set it and forget it, and it would automatically pick up and record and everything like that. Um,
That's why they all had clocks, kids.
Um,
So it knew when to record.
well, and you you also face the never-ending argument that would ensue when somebody's favorite TV show would get recorded over,
Oh my God.
or even worse, someone's home memory movie would get recorded over with
You
something.
recorded you recorded Friends on my wedding video?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
sorry.
the advent of TiVo and DVRs were just a godsend. Those were you would tell it, especially for TiVo was the original one where you could tell it, I want to watch. You said Friends. I'll use Friends. I want to watch Friends, but I'm not going to be home for it. I can set a season pass for Friends, and every time it's on, it would record it. Um, but back in these days, you had to pop a tape in, and
Mhm.
if you didn't check to see how much space you had on the tape, you might
Or if it
lose.
was set up for regular play, long play, or SL, super long play.
Yes.
Yeah, you had to make
Yeah.
sure that that was set right too.
Well, and I always recorded Sunday nights on Fox because Sunday night was animation domination followed by X-Files.
Hmm.
And I would set up that block, but during football season, I would have to set it to record an hour later than the shows or 2 hours later because football would run into it and the shows would come on late. So if the show didn't start on time, you had to account for that when you set your recording up and
Hmm.
everything like that.
You had to do math in your head.
Yeah, but yeah, VHS one and VHS one because of porn.
Yeah,
Um,
that's the argument.
yeah,
Because honestly, the argument about Betamax not being long enough, they fixed that by the time people were buying VCRs. Because again, when this stuff first came out, very few people had it. It was a novelty.
right.
But by the mid '80s, everybody had a VCR in their house.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um,
And
and
you step into the 90s and because originally VHSs were extremely expensive, the
Mhm.
players extremely expensive. You get into the 90s, I remember when our VCR broke down and I waltzed down to Walmart on a Sunday morning and picked up a VCR just real cheap. It's like, oh, it's broke. I'm just going to go replace it. And I brought a VCR home. Um, I don't know. It was really kind of a cool time with being able to record shows and things like that. I never had a Betamax. I always had VHS, so I never really got to experience um, the quality
I
difference.
we didn't I didn't have well, I actually did years later. I'd gotten one that someone didn't wanted to get rid of, and I used it as a novelty. But I had friends who were way. It was like I don't understand why people like VHS. Betamax is better. It's smaller, it stores better, it's better quality, and at that point it was cheaper. But it wasn't when it was released.
Right.
VHS was just a little bit cheaper than Betamax, but again, Betamax beat them on price when VHS really started taking off. But by that time, it was kind of too late.
Hmm.
Um, but again, I mean, television production studios used them for years. They didn't even use the professional stuff. They were using that semi-professional stuff because it was so easy to use. And honestly, if you know what you're doing, VCRs are very easy to fix because 9 times out of 10, it's just how the head is sitting and there's adjustment screws. So you get somebody who knows what they're doing, you can keep those things going for years, just years. And like, apparently, because that's what they're doing now. And you could still get parts for them, which is weird. But yeah, the idea of physical media is amazing, and I love it. And that's why I wanted to talk about beta because it's like, oh, this is something that there's a I say small, it's tens of thousands of people who are big proponents of Betamax. And love it and play with it and do all sorts of stuff. There's conventions and things for beta people. Um, I just think it's cool. It is definitely a nerdery that not a lot of people talk about. But yeah, that's about it for Betamax, other than it's cool. You should look at it. At least look at the videos that I produce because it's amazing because they They show you why things or comparisons and contrasts in these videos. I got about six of them.
Well, and I think it's worth a watch just to see where everything started and where it came from.
Yes.
Me personally, you know, I've got my seasons pass that I've got set up through YouTube TV.
Mhm.
I've got all my streaming. I don't miss videotapes at all. I really don't. Um, Hell, now I don't even miss my Blu-ray and my DVDs because I don't even use those anymore. Um, everything's streaming for me, and I like the convenience of that. I
Oh yeah,
much
yeah.
prefer the technology where we
Yeah.
are.
I mean, it's kind of what we dreamed of when we were younger. It's like, what would be great if I didn't have to buy all these video cassettes that were just someplace where I could go click on them and watch them. We had these conversations back in the 80s and the 90s.
Hmm.
Um, so it is kind of beautiful, but mm, I still kind of like I still kind of like the media. Matter of fact, I've got a VHS slash DVD that I hooked up in here the other day just to watch a, a Babylon 5 DVD that someone gave me.
The only VHS I have left is a copy of Star Wars. That's the only VHS
You
I
got a
have left.
VHS copy of Star Wars?
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I keep that for nostalgia, no more than anything
Hmm.
else. I don't have a VCR anymore. I have nothing to play it on.
No,
I just keep it for the nostalgia of it.
just keep it in a case.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice.
So cool, awesome. Thanks for that trip down memory lane. I appreciate those.
Thank you, sir.
With that, we'll step over to the murdery side of the house.
Murder.
For today, I got my information off NBC4 Washington, ABC News, the New York Times, Law and Crime, Medium, and People. And this is the story of the Banfield murders.
The Banfield Murders.
So, on the morning of February 24th, 2023, so this is not long ago at all,
Well,
calls to 911 from the Banfield family home set off a chain of events that would unravel a dark, twisted tale of betrayal, love, and murder.
betrayal, love, and murder.
Police arrived and they found Christine Banfield, who was a mother and wife, barely alive with multiple stab wounds to her body. Nearby, there was a man named Joseph Ryan who was found dead, shot in cold blood. And the police were very, very puzzled by this scene because Christine's husband, Brendan Banfield, the couple's au pair, Juliana, I cannot pronounce this, Maggle Hayes, we'll go with that.
Okay.
Um, and Christine and Brendan's 4-year-old daughter were all present at the home yet unharmed, you know. So what happened here? According to the au pair, Juliana, she had left the house early that morning with the child to go to the zoo, but they had to return later because they forgot their packed lunches. When they arrived back, she said that there was a strange car that she didn't recognize parked in the Banfield home driveway. She was concerned, so she called her employer, Brendan, and he rushed home to see what was happening. Brendan and Juliana claimed that they entered the home together and heard noises from upstairs. When they walked into the master bedroom, they discovered an unknown man. This would end up being Joseph Ryan, with the naked, bloody body of Christine Banfield. Um, so they tried to save Christine, and so Joseph was shot and killed. He had been invited to the house by Christine for a tryst after chatting on a fetish website, and things got out of hand. Um, the story started falling apart during the investigation. It started as a case of self-defense, and it soon um, really kind of crumbled under the weight of suspicion, lies, and secrets that they were not prepared to uncover. The Banfields appeared to be a happily married couple in love to everybody who knew them. And Christine and Brendan looked like the picture perfect couple in a picture perfect life. They both had fantastic jobs. Christine was working as an intensive care nurse at a suburban Virginia hospital, and Brendan was a criminal investigator for the Internal Revenue Service.
Hmm.
They had moved from Long Island, New York to Virginia in 2019, shortly after their daughter Valerie was born. Christine was known to be a very loving and engaged mother, but she really, really shined at her work in the hospital, One of her former patients, a man named Rodrigo Valderrama, had been taking care of Christine during his battle with COVID-19, and he later said, quote, "She was an angel for me. She shaved me. She helped me set up a Zoom call with my family. And her kindness and attentiveness during his hospital stay led the pair to striking up a friendship." Um, they had busy work schedules, and Christine confided in Rodrigo that she and her husband Brendan were having trouble balancing the housework and finding proper childcare for Valerie.
Yeah.
And in 2021, Christine said she was hiring an au pair from Brazil to help out with taking care of the home and their daughter. With and with him being from Colombia, she asked him for local South American restaurant recommendations because she wanted to help the au pair feel at home.
Yeah.
This would actually be Brendan and Christine's second au pair hired from Brazil, so they knew the drill. They had to find someone who was caring, professional, and most importantly, had a personality that would fit their family dynamic. They found 21-year-old Juliana's post through a large agency called Culture Care Au Pair, whose LinkedIn profile says they are, quote, "proud to be the largest and most experienced au pair organization in the world, having successfully placed more than 120,000 au pairs into the welcoming American home since 1989." So Brennan and Christine started having conversations with Julia online. They hit it off, and so they hired her and invited her to come live with them in Virginia. Um, Most families who hire an au pair don't actually get to meet them until the day they arrive at the home. For me, maybe it's because I read, listen to, and watch far too much true crime content,
Uh-huh.
but I can't imagine inviting a stranger from across the world to move into my country and
I'm
live
gonna
in my
be
house and care
honest.
for my child.
Au pairing kind of sounds like slavery to me. The
I,
idea of it leaves a really bad taste in my mouth. It's like, okay, you
I,
can't hire somebody from here.
I've heard that
You want a
argument somewhat.
slave? Yeah,
I've heard that argument somewhat, but I just
yeah,
couldn't imagine them coming in to my home to care for my child and live at my home when I
yeah,
never met them. I mean, what if the vibe is off from right when they get there?
yeah,
If you've ever met anyone online in person, you do know that sometimes the person on the computer just doesn't match the person in real life.
yeah. Well, I mean, I mean, was it uh, 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 threaten a man's life, and you will finally know who he is, or whatever the
Sure,
hell that is. You know what I
sure.
mean? That bit from, I think it's Sun Tzu.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, and I mean, this does seem kind of dangerous or in the least an uncomfortable situation for the family doing the hiring, but what about the au pair? I mean, they're
yeah,
leaving their home country to move into a stranger's home where
yeah,
you literally are depending on the employer to house you, feed you, pay you, and allow you to stay in the country. Again, you mentioned it's kind of
yeah,
like slavery. It's kind of
yeah.
um however, Juliana was said to be over the moon excited to have the opportunity, and at first everything seemed great. On the morning of February 21st, 24th, 2023, Juliana left with Valerie for a day trip to the zoo, as I had said. It was just after 7 a.m., and Mr. Banfield left for work around the same time while Mrs. Banfield remained at home. Juliana had been working for the Banfields at this point for just under 2 years. Shortly after leaving, Juliana realized she had forgotten their lunches, so she returned home. And this is where Juliana said that she stopped in her track when she saw the unfamiliar car in the driveway. And for whatever reason, this concerned her, so she called Christine, but there was no answer. And when Christine didn't pick up, she decided to call Brendan, who told her he was coming home to see what was going on, as we had said before.
Yeah.
So when he arrived, the two went in together. Brendan went upstairs while Juliana took Valerie down to the basement. According to their statements, Juliana heard loud shouting coming from upstairs, so she ran up to the master bedroom to see what was going on. And this is where she said a strange man was holding a knife to Christine.
Hmm.
Christine was naked and appeared she had already been stabbed. And Brendan was holding a service weapon. Again, it was an investigator for the IRS.
Hmm.
He was holding a service weapon at the man, shouting, "Drop the knife." When he didn't, Brendan shot him. Then, according to what Juliana would later tell investigators, Brendan told her to go to a safe located in the bathroom and retrieve a second gun, giving her the code to open it. She did as she was told, and when the man who had been shot appeared to move, she fired the gun at him, later arguing that she acted in self-defense to protect the family. So 911 dispatch would receive at least two phone calls from the home within 1 minute of each other, but the caller hung up before dispatchers could get any information. Approximately 10 minutes after the last hang up, they received a phone call from Juliana, who said something to the effect that a friend had been hurt. Um, this could have been due to the language barrier.
Yeah.
Not really sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Either way, Brendan grabbed the phone from Juliana and told dispatch that he had just shot an intruder in his home who was stabbing his wife.
Yeah. I mean, yes, she may already think in English and everything else, but in a panic, it's going to be
Exactly.
hard to communicate. Yeah. Especially if it's
Exactly.
not your first language.
So again, police arrived on the scene. They found Christine suffering from multiple stab wounds. She was barely alive and quickly transported to the hospital, but she would die from her injuries. As for the strange man or the intruder who had been shot, he would be identified as 38-year-old Joseph Ryan. Police did recover a knife and two guns from the scene, but what was unusual is they found no signs of forced entry. So was he invited into the house? So police had to dig a little further into this. When they looked at Joseph Ryan's devices, they learned that he was actually at the Banfield home that day for a hookup after communicating with a woman identified as Anastasia 9 on a fetish website called FetLife. Anastasia's profile featured a photo of a petite woman in a bathing suit, and the messages exchanged with Joseph, she talked about being into knife play and binding. So they had planned to meet that morning at the Banfield home for rough sex, but police thought there was something a little off on these messages. Um, you can't really tell what a person is into in the bedroom just by looking at them, but the way that the that Anastasia was speaking was much different than how everybody described Christine's demeanor. Investigators were immediately suspicious about the messages on the fetish website and thought it could be possible that someone had chatted with Joseph pretending to be Christine to set up the rendezvous in the Banfield home. Police also found evidence to indicate that Brendan and Juliana had been having an affair for quite some time now. Here we go. Police
This
discovered
was a setup for murder.
uh,
Murder.
Police discovered what was described as lovey-dovey text messages between the two, as well as photos of a romantic trip to New York City they had recently taken together. And they also learned that Brendan and Juliana had visited a gun range together about 2 months before the incident, and that Brendan had purchased the gun that Juliana had used to shoot Joseph. Meanwhile, the autopsy conducted on Joseph's body had revealed he had been shot twice, one in the head by Brendan's gun and once in the chest by Juliana, but it was the bullet shot by Juliana that killed Joseph. He had already been incapacitated by Brendan when Juliana shot him, and so the police were able to get an arrest warrant to arrest Juliana for second-degree murder.
Man, this guy showed up to this house for some kinky get down and he gets framed for murder and murdered himself. That's awful.
Well, he never got framed for murder. He got killed.
That's true. I mean, well, okay. They attempted to frame his ass for murder and
Yes.
kill him.
Yes. The police did
I
return to
think they killed that poor boy. Canapé. Sorry, it's
uh,
from Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil.
the police returned to the Banfield home in October 2023 to arrest Juliana, which was 8 months after this incident, which is when they discovered some very interesting things there. It appeared that Juliana had moved into the master bedroom with Brendan, and all of her clothing was now hanging in the master bedroom closet. She had lingerie lying in the bed, and on top of it, there was a framed photo of Brendan and Juliana sitting on the nightstand beside the table. Um, Brendan seemingly had moved on from his grief quite quickly, and he wasn't even trying to hide it. Now that they had Juliana in custody, investigators worked to try to get more information about what happened, and they told her straight up that they knew she had been having an affair with Brendan, They presented her with the text messages between Joseph and someone pretending to be Christine on the fetish website. They asked about the gun range, and they worked with the evidence they already had in hand to find out even more about what happened on the day of the double homicide. Juliana ended up taking a plea deal, agreeing to cooperate in the murder investigation involving Brendan. Investigators believe the two had worked together to plot the murder of Christine and pin it on Joseph, but they needed more information to seal the deal. She would plead guilty to a lesser charge of manslaughter in exchange for cooperation. It would take nearly another full year for the general attorney's office to build their case against Brendan. And in September of 2024, he was finally arrested after forensics experts found evidence that the bodies of both victims, Christine and Joseph, had been moved after the murders.
Mm.
In fact, post-mortem on Joseph's arm showed that it had been moved and smeared with Christine's blood to make it look like he had stabbed her. But the prosecution believed that it was actually Brendan who had killed his wife and then framed Joseph, and they had a strong case to support this. The messages between Brendan and Juliana dated as far back as August 2022 and showed that he had a desire to get rid of his wife. So this now showed premeditation.
Premeditated murder. That's murder one.
A few weeks before the incident, it is alleged that Brendan created a profile on fetish website FetLife, which caters to adults who enjoy BDSM, bondage, and role playing. He set up the Anastasia 9 profile, pretending to be his wife, Christine. And then he began communicating with Joseph Ryan, who was very open about his sexual preferences. He even directed Juliana to speak to Joseph on the phone, pretending to be Christine to set up the rendezvous, so it set up the perfect scenario. Shortly before the murders, both Brendan and Juliana replaced their cell phones, trying to get rid of any evidence. And on the morning of the incident, Brendan was allegedly supposed to be at work, but police were able to confirm that he was waiting outside a McDonald's near his home. Then Joseph Ryan came to the Banfield home to have sex involving knife play with a woman he believed he had been chatting with. Christine had no idea about this plan at all. They then set it up to look like Brendan and Juliana tried to save Christine from a knife attack. However, the prosecution believes it was Brendan who stabbed his wife to death and not Joseph Ryan. Brendan would end up being indicted on 4 counts of aggravated murder and 1 count of use of a firearm in the commission of a felony. His trial is set for February 2025, so next month,
Oh, wow.
where Juliana is expected to testify against him. Juliana faces up to 10 years in prison for her manslaughter charge, and she is scheduled to be sentenced in March. Prosecutors asked the judge to wait to sentence her until after Brendan's trial to ensure she continues to cooperate. But
Hmm.
it does sound like prosecutors are recommending that she be released for time served after she testifies against Brendan, meaning that after all this, she could be released after serving just a year in jail.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
Well, yeah, but I mean, she's also violated her visa too. I mean, she's gonna
yeah,
have to go back to where was it she came from? It was Colombia,
Brazil.
Brazil.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the whole thing makes me sick to my stomach. It's very
Yeah.
disheartening that the au pair is only being charged with manslaughter.
Hmm.
According to the evidence, she was involved in every step of the planning of the double murder to get the wife out of the picture. Um, and on the day in question, she even brought little Valerie back into the home where her mother was
Oh, where her
already
mother was
stabbed to
dying.
death.
Yeah.
Yes. At least she had the decency to bring her to the basement where hopefully she didn't hear the murders happen. But
Hmm.
now that little girl has to live without her mom for the rest of her life.
And her dad.
Well, also the daddy could be with his side piece.
Yeah.
You know, um, Juliana also went to the gun range to learn how to shoot so that she could kill Joseph Ryan,
Hmm.
who, as you said, was an innocent man who was unwittingly caught up in
He
in
was going
in,
to get
in
his
this.
freak on, and he got shot down.
Right. She talked with him on the phone. She invited him to the house, and it was her bullet that killed him. Is
Hmm.
manslaughter really justice here?
Well, yeah, but they wanted to get at least one of these perpetrators for murder one.
I know, but it, this brings me to the question that really always puzzles me in cases like this. Why do these men who kill their wives after starting an affair not just fucking get a divorce?
Yeah.
Why
Dude,
do
my
they
dad's
have?
been divorced like 8 times.
Why do they have to
Just get a
destroy
divorce.
so many lives, including the lives of their children, by killing
Yeah,
their spouse instead of just walking away from the marriage?
just get a divorce.
Are they worried about having to pay alimony? Are they worried about losing their marital assets? Not only is this downright evil, it's idiotic.
Yeah,
You have to know that the husband is always going to be suspect number one.
yeah,
Add in an affair, you're always going to get caught.
yeah.
And this
It's
is
not like 1975 where, eh. But I mean, why don't you just walk away? Shack
well,
up with the au pair. Just go shack up with the au pair. It's like, what do you? It's you know what? It's probably not even having to do with the money. It's their perceived position in society. I
and
guarantee you
that's
that's what it
and
is.
well, and that's part of it because we've talked about this before, and this is where I really believe because it hasn't been studied enough. We have got to do a deeper study into these family annihilator killers.
Hmm.
We've talked about a few of these, and there's not enough psychological study in these type of killers. The most common types are anger over family breakup, the need for power,
Hmm.
personality disorder, and unable to cope with personal failure. Those are the common types of these family
Yeah,
annihilators. I'm not sure that any of these apply here, except maybe for the need for power, but even that kind of seems a little slim here.
yeah,
Is this one a new case that hasn't been a new type that hasn't been studied yet? Um, I read through the case. I just didn't see a whole lot of family problems. Brennan just seemed to want to be with Juliana, even though his home life was seemed normal. But then again, we don't know what was going
yeah,
on behind the scenes.
yeah. You don't know. I mean, they could have they could have not been happily married for years.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
happens a lot of times, especially when people meet when they're young, um, and then
Well,
get married and have children and everything else. And it's like, dude, if he, you know what, if he'd have run off with Juliana, he'd be happy right now.
maybe,
Yeah, if he'd just run off with Juliana, he'd be
maybe,
happy right now.
maybe he would. We don't know that he would be happy with that. I don't know that he would be happy with her either. Um, I don't know. Sad as the whole thing is, I'm going to go back to my previous statement. If you don't want to be with your spouse, leave. If
Yeah,
you aren't happy in your marriage, get help or leave.
yeah.
Murder is not an option.
No,
Um, we
on the
we've
list of things that you need to do, murder should come in dead last behind ski jumping sharks.
we've done unfortunately too many of these
Hmm.
family annihilators. That they see that as the option to get out of their marriage, to get out of their
Yeah,
family life that they're unhappy with for whatever reason. You've got the Chris Watts case where he killed his wife, his pregnant wife, and his two children, and buried them in the oil tanks. Um, I just don't understand these, and it's something that has to be studied more
yeah,
because we are seeing these family annihilators,
yeah.
and it just doesn't make sense that murder is what they
Yeah,
see as
yeah,
their
yeah.
option.
There's several options you can go through before you hit up murder. You know.
I know. Anyway, that's the story of the Banfield murders.
Well, thank you for that, sir. That is kind of fascinating and current.
Yeah, yeah, really current because his trial starts next month. So, I'll follow along with that just like I did the Chad and Lori Daybell one, which both of them have been convicted now,
Mhm.
thankfully. But yeah, I'm gonna follow along with that because I'm curious to see what happens there. So anyway, that takes us to the end of another recording week. With that, you can find more information about us on nerderymerdy.com. That's our hub for everything we talk about. You can find links to the topics we talk about, plus pictures. Plus, you'll find the link to our YouTube page, which Zig so often updates with our videos.
Yeah, go check out that YouTube page. It's some comparison and contrast to VHS and Betamax, and there's some really cool little videos. And I think the longest one's like 40 minutes. Most of them are like 10.
Awesome. Appreciate all the work you do on that. You can also find the link to our merchandise page where if you wish to show off your nerdery murdery fandom, please do consider purchasing something from there. That, along with our patrons, our Patreon link is on our page, and our patrons and the people who purchase our merchandise help with the costs that are associated with this show. It costs to keep us on the air, keep our stuff uploaded, stored, everything like that. So please do consider that. We do appreciate each and every one of you.
Please and thank you.
Please and thank you. Last but not least, please don't forget to leave a 5-star review wherever you can. It really helps us and helps others find our content that may be looking for the information that we talk about. So with that,
I have been Zig with your nerdery.
and I'm Jeffrey with your murdering.
Cue the music.